Welcome to Drawing Club. Today we're drawing Lady Veronica Vole. This is Veronica Vole, and to draw her you'll need a pencil and an eraser to erase any mistakes, and maybe a pencil sharpener to sharpen your pencil with, and a black marker or a black pencil crayon to outline her with, and you might want some color pencils or some color markers. But I'm going to use this grey marker to draw her with, just so you can see what I'm doing. So today, instead of talking you through the drawing, I'm going to tell you another story. And this is going to be a story about the Lady Veronica Vole and Percival Pigworthy, the pig detective who was also known as Hog Mild. So as I'm drawing, I'm just going to tell you the story, and you can just follow along. And, if I'm drawing too quickly, of course, as usual, you can always pause the video, and that'll stop the story, and you'll be able to catch up with the drawing. Okay, so let's get on to our story about Lady Veronica Vole. Lady Veronica Vole lived in a cosy apartment on Arbour Street in London. Most afternoons she sat on a bench next to a large window, drinking Lady Grey tea, listening to adventure stories on her wireless radio, and making flower arrangements using blossoms she picked in the park near her home. But today was different. Today was a special day. Today she had been invited to the opening of a new French restaurant and bakery by her friend Percival Pigworthy. This was exciting for two reasons. First, Lady Veronica quite liked the dapper young pig with his perfectly combed hair and his argyle sweater vest. And second, she had recently found out that Percival was secretly the famous pig detective known to the world as Hog Mild. So Lady Veronica put on her favourite wide-brimmed hat, adding a sunflower and 2 daisies from the arrangement she was working on to it, and stood waiting on the doorstep of her building for Percival to arrive. After a moment, the handsome young pig came around the corner, walking with a determined air. "Hello, Percival," waved Veronica happily. "Is the restaurant very far from here?" "Not at all," replied the pig with a respectful nod. "It's just a few doors down from my own apartment, 221 P. Porker Street. It should only take us 5.5 minutes to get there." "Oh, Percival, you're always so precise." "Lady Veronica, in my line of business, being exact is the exactly correct way to go about things. If I do not pay close attention to the details, how could I ever solve a mystery? For example, I deduce that you had a blueberry and poppy seed muffin for breakfast this morning." "My goodness, Percival, how could you possibly know that?" said Lady Veronica, her eyes sparkling with wonder. "Simple, really. You still have some crumbs stuck to your whiskers." "Oh, Percival," laughed Lady Veronica, "you're incorrigible." As the pig detective and his vole companion passed by a doorway, Percival leaned in and dropped some money into the hat of a young rat who was sitting on the doorstep. "Thanks, governor," said the rat happily. "Not at all," replied the pig. "Just don't forget to tell me if you hear anything more about the case of the half-eaten gooseberry tart." "Will do, governor. If me whiskers get so much as a sniff of gooseberry, you'll be the first to know," said the small rat. "Who was that?" asked Lady Veronica as they turned the corner onto Porker Street. "That was Terence Rattigan, one of my irregulars." "What's an irregular?" "Just some young people I pay a little money to. They help me with my investigations." "You mean they're spies?" squeaked Lady Veronica excitedly. "Something like that, I suppose, yes." "Ah, but here we are." Percival stopped walking and pulled on the handle to a heavy wooden door. In the large window there was a painted sign reading, "Le Petit Porcel." "Oh, I'm ever so excited," said Lady Veronica. "I can't wait to try some real French cakes and pastries." As they stepped inside the small restaurant, a badger in a black suit stepped forward to greet them. "Good afternoon, sir and madam. Do you have a reservation?" Yes, my good man. It will be under the name of Percival Pigworthy. Ah, yes. A table for two. Come this way, please, said the Badger politely. As Percival and Lady Veronica walked to their table, they heard a voice calling out to them.
I say, old boy, fancy seeing you here.
Percival turned and saw Duchess Henrietta Eggs Benedict and her husband, Duke Roger Eggs Benedict, sitting at a table near the window. Duke and Duchess, how wonderful to see you! What brings you all the way into London today? Asked the pig detective. Oh, Roger wanted to try the millet crepes, answered the Duchess. You know his grandmamma was French, of course, and when he heard a new French restaurant and patisserie was opening, he just had to be here on opening day. Is Chester P. Fwoggington with you? Asked Lady Veronica.
I'm afraid not, said Duke Roger, shaking his rooster head. It's the funniest thing. When I invited him, he said, "No, thank you," and all the colour drained right out of his face.
Ah, said Percival. Yes, I'm not terribly surprised. I don't think frogs feel very comfortable in French restaurants.
Oh well, his loss. I say, though, it's taking a deuced long time to get our food. I wonder what the hold-up is.
You know how it is, snorted the Duchess. Good help is so hard to find these days. I'm sure the cooks are all asleep back there. Call over that Badger and ask him where our crepes are. Just then, as if in answer, the Badger in the black suit came rushing out of the kitchen and bustled up to the table. I'm most dreadfully sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm afraid something awful has happened.
Well, what is it, man? Spit it out,
barked the Duke angrily, his rooster stomach rumbling with hunger. It's our head chef and all the baked goods. They're gone.
What do you mean, gone?
Shrieked the Duchess. I've never heard the like. What kind of a restaurant is this, anyway? Everyone just calm down a moment, interrupted Percival. Sir, perhaps I may be of assistance. It sounds as though you have a pastry mystery, and I am somewhat of an expert in these matters. Percival pulled a small business card out of his pocket and showed it to the flustered Badger. On the card was written the words, Hog Mild, Consulting Detective to Scotland Barnyard, Solver of mysteries involving cakes, tarts, pies, and other baked goods. Mr. Mild, thank goodness it's you, said the Badger. Come this way, please. I'll show you to the kitchen. Oh, how exciting, squeaked Lady Veronica. A mystery.
Well, I'm coming too, said the Duke. Perhaps they didn't take all the food. I tell you, man, I'm famished.
The worried Badger led Percival, Lady Veronica, and the Duke and Duchess back into the kitchen. The sight that greeted them was a shocking one. There was white powder spread on every surface, and on the floor, a large pool of something sticky and red.
Good gravy, man!
Exclaimed the Duke in alarm.
That's not what I think it is it?
Percival bent down to examine the puddle, and looked back at the large rooster. No, it appears to be raspberry moscato jam, and quite a tasty one if I'm any judge. My favourite, in fact. Well, what happened then? Asked the Duchess. And who are those two skulking back there? In the back corner of the kitchen, behind the empty food shelves, stood a tall rat and a short pygmy shrew, both wearing aprons and both looking nervous. Gentlemen, could you please step forward? Asked Percival, gesturing to the two kitchen hands. The manager Badger nodded, and the shrew and rat came out from behind the food pantry. This is Mr. Norvicious, said the Badger, pointing to the tall rat. He's our assistant chef. And this, he added, pointing to the shrew, This is Mr. O'Dalogue, our dishwasher. Now, there's no need to be anxious, my good men. I just need to ask you a few questions, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of this case, said Percival, starting to walk back and forward in the small kitchen, his hands behind his back. Mr. Norvicius, when was the last time you saw the head chef?
I ain't seen him since last night. We was working late getting the dough ready for this morning.
I see. And what about you, Mr. Dalogue?
Me, sir? Oh, the last time I saw Mr. Frambois was last night as well, when I was finishing up with me washing. I had to scrub all the jam and custard out of the pots and pans.
Jam and custard, you say? Very interesting. So, did you both leave before or after Mr. Frambois?
Before, I think, said the shrew, throwing a worried glance at the tall rat. Yeah, before, ain't no doubt. Mr. Frambois said for us to go home, see? Said he still had a few things what he had to do.
Oh, this is ridiculous, interrupted the Duchess. They're obviously both guilty. You can tell just by looking at them. The rat clearly wanted the job of head chef, and so jealously did away with poor Mr. Frambois.
No, I never, protested the assistant chef. Are you contradicting my wife? Bellowed the Duke. No, sir, I mean, yes, sir, I mean...
And the shrew, continued Duchess Henrietta. Well, with a name like O'Dalogue, you know he must be up to no good. I don't think having a name that starts with O is a crime. At least not yet, smiled Percival. No, to be honest, I tend to believe both these men. Neither of them is guilty of kidnapping the head chef, or of stealing the pastries. Well then, what did happen, Percival? Asked Lady Veronica. Before I explain that, we should let the head chef, poor Mr. Frambois, give us his version of last night's events.
But however will he do that? Asked the Duke. He's not here.
Isn't he? Asked Percival, walking over to a large metal door at the back of the kitchen. He pulled it open, and inside, along with several bottles of milk and cream, was a rabbit in a chef's hat, tied up with thick rope. But however did you know, Percival? Asked Lady Veronica in amazement. Elementary, my dear. You can clearly see the drag marks on the floor in the flour leading up to the door. I'm rather surprised none of you noticed it yourselves.
Zut alors!
Cried the head chef as the badger untied him.
You mean you knew I was in there all along? Why didn't you open the door right away?
First, I had to interview Mr. O'Dalogue and Mr. Norvicius. There were a few pieces of information I needed to know. But perhaps, Mr. Frambois, you can fill in the final piece of the puzzle. Tell us what happened last night.
I was just putting the final touches on my jam tarts when two men burst in the back door, tied me up and threw me in the cooler here.
By any chance, were both men short and somewhat round-looking?
Zut alors, oui, exactement. But how did you know this?
Because I'm rather afraid that this is all my fault, sir. I'm most dreadfully sorry.
What? Bellowed the Duke in surprise. How can this be your fault, Pigworthy?
I just have one last question to ask. Mr. Frambois, by any chance did the food stolen from your kitchen last night include 24 Moscato raspberry tarts, 24 custard-filled eclairs, and 1 Black Forest cake?
Why, yes, that is exactly what was stolen.
Then that rather clinches it, I'm afraid. It was me.
You mean to say you broke in here last night, tied up this poor man and stole all the food? Asked the Duchess in shock.
In a manner, yes. You see, late last night, I put in a breakfast order to the Boer Brothers of Baker Street. They are my usual pastry procurers. I was somewhat worried about the size of the order, but the Boer brothers assured me it would be no problem. I see now that they must not have had the time or the ingredients to make my breakfast properly, and so resorted to stealing it from you.
Sacre bleu! Quelle surprise!
I am sorry, Mr. Frambois. I will of course pay you for the damage and for the stolen goods. Then, this afternoon, I will have a word with those scheming Boer brothers and make sure they never bother you again.
Merci, Monsieur...
Mild. Hog Mild.
Well, I suppose that solves that,
said the Duke.
Except I'm still hungry.
Oh, mon Dieu, I'm so sorry, said Chef Frambois. If you will just wait un moment, I will whip you up a lunch the likes of which you have never tasted. Well, that sounds jolly good, said Lady Veronica excitedly. Then she turned to Percival. Wait, do you mean to say that you ate 48 pies and a whole cake for breakfast this morning? Yes, and that was hours ago. No wonder I'm so hungry. Oh, Percival, she laughed, you're absolutely incorrigible. Are you quite sure those two had nothing to do with it? Asked the Duchess, shooting a suspicious glance at Mr. O'Delogue and Mr. Norvicius.
All right, allons-y, out of my kitchen, for now I will prepare the greatest lunch you have ever eaten. Capital! Shouted the Duke happily. I'm so hungry I could eat 48 pies myself.
The only mystery left is where I'm going to get tomorrow's breakfast from, said Percival Pigworthy worriedly. Ah, well, I still have a few hours to solve that one.
The end. Okay, so this time our story was a little bit longer, so it almost took us to the end of the drawing. So what we'll do is I will play a little bit of music until the end, and then we'll be done. So I'll put up the color version after I finish drawing with my marker here, and you can take a look at that. And of course, if you want to change the colors of Lady Veronica, you can do that if you want. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed today's story, The Further Adventures of Percival Pigworthy. I think there'll be one more of these stories coming next week. And after that, we'll see what happens. Okay. Thanks so much for coming again today, and I can't wait to see you guys again at Drawing Club.